Shall I start, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome back, participants. Today's second session is about Android lifecycle management and background tasks, and I feel so ecstatic to introduce Mr. Ramesh Armugam, sir. He has completed his Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science and Engineering at IRTT in 2009. He has 12 years of industrial experience in software development technical lead at the Happiest Mind Technologies in Private Limited. He has also done many notable achievements in his career, and he has also received an Architect Excellence Award 2020 at the Happiest Mind. And it gives me a profound pleasure to invite you for the session, sir. With much honor, I request you to take up the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tamil Priya, for that introduction. Uh,
Thank you, sir.
so I will share my screen. So let me know once you're able to see the screen.
Yes, sir.
So now we are going to talk about, discuss, learn about the storage options in any Android applications. Either it can be Java or Kotlin, it is irrespective. But anyway, till now we have already seen couple of things regarding Android application and lifecycle management, and how what about Kotlin basics, and how to create application in Kotlin, all those things. I think now this is the right time to go much deeper into it. So so we'll learn few things. Let's see, in more storage options, right? We will see that, and that's this
Ramesh, sir.
shared space. Yeah.
Sir, your
Uh,
voice is breaking. I think some network issues are available with you.
Hello.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Am I clearly audible enough now?
Yes, now it's enough.
Okay. So what I was telling, we will see few things like why we have to learn about storage option, and how many types of storages are there. Either storage is very specific to an application, or it is a shared uh, storage between different applications, and what are all the other things like shared preferences, and is there any data type kind of storage where you see in typical embed standalone applications or web applications, you see database things, right? So is there any specific data bases are there in Android? So all those things we will see. Now, to be very specific to learning storage options, in any application, to make application very memory optimized, you need to know like how many options are there, whether you have embedded storage or external storage, or any cloud options are there, or inbuilt databases are there, so that you can create application which uses memory very optimistically, and you can create timely responding applications when you know like you have a RAM reading and writing from RAM to a RAM is very quickly happening. If you see that, okay, you are creating an application where you need to display images which should be displayed very immediately, so that you can prefer writing in a file in a local memory itself, so that it can be retrieved and responded in a UI very quickly. And if you learn about storage options, you can give good user experience, and you can decide like when exactly you need to have API calls and when to avoid unnecessary API calls. For example, you are create an application which, for example, you are creating a Facebook itself. When you see Facebook, right? When you land on a home page, you will be immediately given response, irrespective of your internet connectivity. It doesn't give you a loading screen where a poor loading option is there and to retrieve data. So how they manage to do certain things, preloaded things are saved in local memory. So that can be very promptly given in the user page. Then background, you can load all other updated things from server, and that can be reflected later when the things are ready from the background. So you can give good user experience, and you can avoid unnecessary API calls. For example, uh, you see WhatsApp, right? You have 100 friends. All 100 friends will be giving you a message. So it doesn't mean that you have to your application has to connect with a server 100 times. So what will happen? Your snapshot, what is there in the WhatsApp server for you, will be stored in your phone, and it has very limited and very time. For example, per second you will probably connect with WhatsApp server only once, not for every friend what you have in WhatsApp, but for only once. So in that way you can decide what can be stored in your phone memory and what can be there in server, and when exactly this snapshot sharing should happen. So you can avoid unnecessary API calls, and you can plan wisely, and you can preserve any critical data. For example, you have a application which takes photo and which edits photo. You have taken like 100 photos till now. Your application is somehow deleted. It doesn't mean that you have to lose all 100 photos which are taken till now, right? So it has to be stored for if you install the application again. So those 100 photos should be retrieved and displayed in the phone application. So how they can be done? You have to use a memory which is externalized. So we can probably keep our application an ability to store the images whenever it is being taken to an external SD card or something else, which doesn't get erased, right? You can preserve any critical data, and you can persist the data which can be shared by some other application. Okay, now you decide for taking photo, you create an application, and for editing application, you don't want to complicate things too much. So you want to keep two different applications, which takes photo and which edits photo, and probably which creates video out of photos. Three applications. So three applications should be sharing same data, right? Which is a photo. So you can plan it wisely when you learn and understand how the storage options for any mobile device it matters. Okay, application specific data. It can be, as I said earlier, this is for only for that particular applications. It cannot be shared with other applications, and for for example, you have your Facebook login credentials. So that cannot be shared with some other applications, right? Even if you take a photo editing application, only photos can be shared. If you have some login credentials or session related data or all other applications specific data should not be shared. So for that, there are specifically designed portions are there in the phone that can be used by your Android Kotlin programming libraries. And next, we will move on to the slide which talks about internal storage directories. So here, internal storage, that is, it will be very similar to external storage, but very limited, and it will be uh, very nearer to the processor. So it will be uh, very fast when compared to the external devices. So certain things like your cache or your time sensitive data, those things can be kept in the internal storage directories. It again prevents other applications from accessing your internal storage application specific data. And so now we will see like how this data from internal storage can be read. For reading, you will have application context, and you will have to give the file name where your data is being written. And so you can read it, and you can see buffer reader. You can stream it. Any data which is stored, you can using stream. Stream, you can read it. Input stream, you can buffer it and get the text out of it. This is to read. Only mainly you have to focus on context and the name to give. And for writing, again you have to use. It is like any typical Java or other languages. You have output file writing and input file reading, right? Those very similar things only. You don't have to be very worried about it. And when you write, you have to again get open file output for the particular context, and by giving the name out of it. And you need to say which mode you need to write, whether it is a private or a public. The mode can be given for writing. And now we will talk about external storage directories. Earlier we have seen internal. Internal is a bit fast and memory limited memory you will have. But in external, right, you will have a much bigger memory, and time comparatively it will be slower than the internal device, internal storage. So now, if you we have already talked about photo editing, photo taking applications, right? When you see photos, right, each and every photo will be of 10 MB, 20 MB. So you can't persist all those photos in the internal memory. So we would obviously prefer writing them into external storage for different reasons. One is like you need a huge memory, and other one is you need to just keep it very persisted, relevant of your deletion or an uninstallation of the applications. So all those things you need to prefer external storage. For accessing external storage, right, you need to give permission in your application. User permission you need to give that, and what type of read. If you want to read, you have to give read external storage. Then only your application will be able to read any file which you tend to read. And then you need to also check the permission is given. You are allowed to read a file, but when you go and read a file, and when you are trying to display a file content into your application, though you have you have written a photo, you have captured a photo, you have written into some location. When you are trying to edit a photo in different applications, you know where you exactly save the photo. But before reading it, right, you need to make sure that whether that location is readable, and whether the photo is there in that location. All those things can be uh, pre-verified before reading any file. It can be text file, or it can be photo, or any file. You need to check these things. Prerequisite is you need to check whether the storage location which you give us readable and the file is there. So this is for writing. So again, for writing, even we need to give permission in the application YML file, and then you need to check whether that the location is writable. Anyway, for those things, right, you have your predefined parameters which tells whether the storage location is uh, there or it is writable, all those things. So you have environment, get external storage state. So if this tells you if this is equal to media mounted, that means your external card is put into your phone. So this takes care. So only thing is you need to make use of it, and get a method defined and tells you whether we can go ahead and read or write. See, I have created a function which tells uh, whether that external storage is writable. So while writing it, I'm just checking if this is writable, and then opens file output stream for that particular file, and then you write the body of the body content to a file. Okay, that's it about your internal and external storages. Now we will talk about shared storage. Um, uh, Already we were discussing about storing content which can be shared to another applications, right? Mainly we will see there are different things, media content, where you can see your photos, videos, audio files, all those content will be classified as media content. And other files are there like PDF and the text files, the document type of files. And other than that, there are data sets. You will have certain data, uh, can be in any type of data which should be kept in a caches. So that will be as a blob. Blob in the sense it can be uh, yeah, object, a user object that can be a byte array, blob data, or image itself you can store as a blob to secure it, or any like a byte data, blob data. There is a API. There are different APIs for media content. Media store API is there. It gives you a facility to directly load all media files, videos, photos, all those things into an application. By querying it, you can just give, okay, I want media photo in this location. You can query it. So it gives you a list of um, photos in that particular location. So it gives you a facility to query anything, or it gives you a facility to delete anything, or it gives you a facility to insert any kind of operation you can do on any media file using this media store API. And similarly, for documents, there are APIs, and data sets, there are APIs, blob store manage. We will now see, like in detail, how media store API can be used to uh, retrieve or display photos in a phone, and to do other things like delete or insert on top of the media files. So now we'll see a method. So this method, think that okay, you are having an activity ready and the model is ready. So now you need a method to retrieve all those images, right? So for that, I give a method here, load images, and view model launch. On launch, you need to retrieve all images, right? For getting images, I need another method called query images, which I will show you later. And the this single content observer in Android.
Sir, again your voice is breaking.
Is this fine now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So any application, Android application, you need to register a observer. So what is the data what you are targeting to display in any activity, that should be given to observer, right? So now we will see whether this observer for this particular application is there or not. If it is not there, you need to go ahead and register it. You need to register observer using content resolver to an application. And once that is registered, so for registering, you need to give media store and location. Here we will target media store images, media external content URL, URI. So this means any external storage media URI will be given as a about media's content observer ka location. And then once it is ready, then only we have to call this method. Okay. First time, right? It will try to get message images. It will not be there. Then things will be checked. Content observers there or not. If it is there, it will retrieve. Otherwise, right? It will set and retrieve the message images. And now, once you have your images from MediaStore API, you can also pre-process them to display. So here I have given a small pre-processing where, see, before even pre-processing, we need to, I told, right, MediaStore API will be having some facilities like querying the media or deleting the media or inserting the media, all those things. Now to list images, right, you need to query the MediaStore API. For querying, you have certain things. The query method will have certain parameters in place, like projection and selection. And for selection, how many arguments are there, and do you want to sort them out or not? All those things. Now, for example, in projection, right, you can tell Media API, okay, I want this kind of details in my result. So now I'm telling, okay, I have an image. Image will have an ID. I need an ID, and images name and what date it is being added. So all these things I need. So this projection gives Media API that things of information needed from the media data. And then selection. Selection, now see, we have a querying system here. So you can either tell whether, okay, you get all the images. Otherwise, you can also tell by selection that, okay, I need a image which has been added from this date, right? So it is kind of, you can give any parameter out of media and say, okay, from this, from that, or in between this. So here, this greater than or equal to. images which are taken are added greater than or equal to this date. The date argument we are passing here. So day 22 and month 10 in year 2008. So your media API will retrieve photos which are added uh, after 2008 and 10th month and 22nd date. And then you can also add a parameter in the query that, okay, I want to order the data result in this way. You have descending, ascending. So you can tell your media API, okay, I want descending orders. That way, your images will be retrieved from 2008 and will be in a descending order. Okay, here, this is how we have to pass the query. Get application, and then a content resolver, which is already set in the previous method, and you query. So when you say query and things are given, and this will retrieve the data. This use, you will have a cursor. Uh, Cursor is like iterator. You can iterate image by image and see like what exactly is there. You can pre-process it and add it to a list, and that can be displayed in a UI. So I have just commented. So you can do whatever processing you need. The cursor will have image, and then you retrieve it and add it to a list and put it in a UI. Okay, that is for querying. You load the data from the media API. Now we will see like, okay, there are different things, insert, delete. Now we will see how delete is happening. So for deleting, right, for deleting any image in an external device, you need to tell what exactly is the URI. That means including the name, where exactly is put there in the external device. That particular location you need to give. And you can give ID, and you can give ID arrays. You can delete one image or 100 images by passing in an array. That's it. See, I will show you where exactly I have referred these things, and later, so that you can get into a deeper. Till now, there is any query till media API? Okay. Now we will jump onto shared preferences. Very important thing this is. So here, it stores very limited data. Limited data in the sense it will be some scenarios you need to store only integer or byte or boolean or string, the primitive data with the key value pair. Okay, you need to store for your application that, okay, how many times you have logged into the application. You can have a key name as logged in times, and then you can give an integer. First time you log in, it can be set to 1, and then next time you get the data from the preferences and then increment it and put it back, so that every time you log in and log out, right, you will do the similar process, and the nth time, right, you will have n in shared preference for the login times. So that kind of scenarios, probably the shared preferences can be preferred. Okay, when we talk about shared preferences, this is, as I said, to store a primitive data such as string, int, float, boolean, as key value pair. It keeps data in a XML file. It creates XML node for every entry and keeps value in an XML file. And it has only a very limited way of storing and retrieving. It has two methods, put int and put string. If the data what you put is a integer type, you can use it, put int. Otherwise, put string. Put string can be for anything, like for date, you can use put string, or name, put string, address, put string. So a very limited one. And here, uh, shared preferences, right? Uh, there are two different ways of committing it. You write it. If it is too time-taking one, right? Uh, your UI will wait till it completes. Okay, and you cannot make your UI wait for such a long time. Okay, if you feel okay, your UI should not wait for the write, so you can just say apply and leave it. So this will be committed whenever it is on its own time. And certain cases, okay, you need to see uh, when it is persisting, then you have to display the UI. So if you want that should happen synchronously, you can use commit. But the apply is for asynchronous commit, and commit is for synchronous commit. And we should probably avoid using commit. Whenever it is very necessary, you can just use it. Otherwise, right, you can just avoid it and use apply and make it asynchronous. Okay, this is for writing. For reading, again, instead of put, it is going to be get. You say get int of this particular parameter or key value you have to pass, and then you will get that particular value. And get string similarly. So for put, you need to give two parameters. One is key and the other one is value. And then for get, you need to give the key of it. That's it about share preferences. And now, so again, for how we will see like how we can make use of shared preferences. For shared preferences, right? I told you you can keep those data will be there in XML file, and that shared preferences can be one or can be multiple also. You have an application, you can either create only one shared preferences for entire application for all the activities. Otherwise, you can create different shared preferences. For example, activity one, login activity, I need to count login count, so I will have shared preference. And for home, I will have like how many times I have clicked on this button, so I will have a different preference for the home. You have two different shared preference. You need to do okay, this key, then some nice
Sir,
nice
sir, your voice is breaking.
this fine now.
Sir, some more disturbances, sir. It's not clear.
Can I reconnect then?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Am I
It's clear.
clearly audible now?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
Actually, my internet is a bit slow.
Okay, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now we are talking about shared preferences, right? Uh, Shared preferences can be multiple for an application or one single enough. So if you want to keep multiple things, you need to differentiate them by a key value. So shared preferences, activity, get shared preferences, get string, and then you need to give like a what is the file name. So it gets that particular shared preferences and what mode you need to give, mode private or something else. If you want to, if you have only one shared preference, you don't have to give this file key. You can directly give for your activity get preferences. You just say mode in which you need to open shared preference. And then after, once the shared preference is retrieved, so you need to now see how you can just enter a value into shared preference. So this is how a shared preference you retrieved by this. So here only one shared preference we consider, and now we need to edit it. So while editing it, right, you are giving value, score value. For example, your activity has a score value in your screen that can be put here, that can be saved into a shared preference. So we are using apply here, so it will be very asynchronous. And then now we will see like how that can be retrieved. So you, the same way, you need to get your shared preference by giving mode or file key into your activity shared preferences method that returns shared preference, and you can get it by shared preference object that get end and the key of the value here we have given, right? So high score key that is stored in your resources string, that similar same item is given here to retrieve high score that is being stored in a shared preference. Okay, now we have completed the internal storages and external storages, application specific storage, and shared preferences. Now we will see like is there any database storage for an Android application? So yeah, it is there. SQLite is there, and it has been there for a while. Now we have Room on top of SQLite. There is a persistence library abstraction layer which uh, which gives all SQLite things in a user-friendly way, developer-friendly way. Sorry. So this SQLite, as we know, this database is for a significant amount of structured data. It is not for file. It is not for any primitive types. If you have a structured, you can say user-defined data. For example, we for our application, Facebook. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So we have an application, same WhatsApp we will take. We have a list of friends. So you create user-defined class called person or friend, where you have their information like ID or phone number, email address, all those things. So that is a structured data, right? So that kind of data can be stored in a database. So SQLite is there. It is like your SQL or Oracle DB, which is there for any web application. SQLite is there for mobile devices. So here, this Room enables
Hello, sir.
your
Hello,
hello.
sir.
Yeah.
Sir. Sir, I would like to have a small information, sir, whether SQLite is industry accepted software.
Yeah, it is an industry accepted one.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, it is industry accepted one, and we use it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So SQLite, we guys know like how the typical database systems are there, right? SQL, MySQL, MS SQL, and Oracle DB, all those things. It is very similar to that. And this Room on top of SQLite, right? Room gives certain things, certain flexibility and certain improvement for using SQL things. Room enables compile time verification of SQL queries. SQL is like a JPA. It provides a database and it provides some implementation of a basic database system. And using Room, you can write certain annotations or querying that can be verified at compile time. You got it? We know like how compile time verification or what is compile time or runtime verifications, right? So this gives compile time verifications. So you don't have to wait for your runtime to give an exception or some errors. That is like pre-populated whenever the code is being entered and being compiled. And Room gives, as I said, convenience annotations. Like in JPA, we have annotations like @entity, @table, mapping, many to many, one to many. All this relationship related annotations are entity related annotations, like how a table which is there in the hard disk can be mapped into a class, Java class or a Kotlin class. So that mapping annotations, that layout annotations, querying annotations, all the basic CRUD operation annotations, all those things can be, there are there in Rooms. And Rooms enables streamlined database migration plans. See, there will be times, right, you will see some evolution happens at database side also, right? You have SQLite 1 now, and you need to migrate it to 2. So SQLite will have different changes in querying all or structure data types and how they store, how they be being retrieved, all those things. This ROMs enables that migration. Uh, it makes migration very simple. At the time of migration, right, there will be not so much of work needed. It is taken care at rooms. Okay, now we will see like how a basic, anyway we know like how application can be created, what is activity, what is life cycle, and how uh, you can display data in the activity. All those things we have seen. Now you think there is a database needed in your application, and okay, I need to display users in my screen which are stored in the database, which can be entered in another screen. So users can be entered and deleted in another screen. So you have a database in your application. To make use of room and your SQLite, certain things are there. You need to given Cradle file, build Cradle file, dependencies should be given. So you need to define a room version into it. And then, so you can define room version, what version of room you use, you can give it. And implementation, what implementation you are using, that can be given. And annotation processor, you can define. And there are certain other things are there, like annotation processing tool you can define in dependencies. And symbolic processing, see, an annotation processing tool will be taking care like what annotation you give, and how that can be used at runtime, compile time, those annotations, all those things can be taken care by annotation processing tool, which they call it as KAPT. And Kotlin symbolic processing tool, which they call it as KSP. You can give that which version of the ROM you use it for, KSP or KAPT, all those things you can define in dependencies. And these are all very primary, and there are optionals. You can define like which Java to you have to use it for your application. These things are very optional. You don't have to worry about it. This is very basic architecture of SQLite database with your application. So there are entities, there are data access objects, DAO we call it as, and there will be like a repository and connection builders, all those other things. But these are all very primary things. Entities are like a representation, a blueprint of table. So you have a number of tables in DB database. You have user, you have address, you have other things. So these entities are nothing but a blueprint, a language specific blueprint of any database table. And then DAO objects are on level above that. So entity, the way you access the entity from the DB, right? They are in the name itself, they are called as data access objects. So you can access entity from DB, and you can persist them into DB. So all those layering is done at data access objects. And then we will see like how entity can be returned, and how database can be configured, and how database object access objects can be configured. And there are different annotations. We will see few annotations in coming slides. Now, entity, as I said, it is a blueprint of a table, right? You have @entity annotation, which even JPA and Hibernate uh, things in a typical web application developments are having. And in any entity, you will have columns, primary key, foreign key, and mapping, embeddings, and cascadings. All those things will be there. We will see very primary things. To define a class as an entity, you have entity annotation. Based on this annotation, right, every class will be taken or considered as entity. And then primary key annotation. When you define value as a primary key, this annotation is needed. Then your Kotlin system will understand, okay, this user ID is a primary key, and column info will be for normal other columns, like you have for user ID and first name and last name. Those can be normal columns, so column info is there. For any column info annotation, you need to give a name of the field which is there for the particular value in a table. In the user, you cannot have like table level namings in your language, right? In tables, there will be different standards in SQL or any database, right? There will be different standards. First underscore name, or somebody will tell underscore, and field name should be there, or somebody will tell all field names should be capital. So this name will map your value, your language level naming, to a name that is being given to in the database. So your room will take care of it. The column info annotation will have table level naming for any value. So the similar, the last name is given as last name in a camel case, but in table it is underscore name, last underscore name. And then we will see like how we will map Kotlin class with a room database. So for mapping any class with a, table database, you have database annotation. There you can see like the version you can define, and entities you can define. Entities are like we have a class called the user. So you give array of user class. That means this database is having a list of or array of user entity. That means whatever is there in the user will be stored in the database called room room database. And that's it. This is you create an app. You can also create interface. Here we have given abstract. You can also give interface. It can be anything, interface or abstraction, to map entity or database to a Kotlin class. Now we will see like for that particular user entity, how a data access object can be created. It can be either abstract or interface. Now user DAO, we have given name as user DAO, and for that particular user entity, how many queries you want to define, you can define. And see, it's about accessing, right? You can query them, you can list them, you can insert, you can delete. All those querying can happen here. And for defining query, you have a query annotation. For selection, select star from user. This selects all the users from the table. So this can be a query. And for that particular query, you can define a function like function get all. So this returns a list of entity user. So internally, it uses this particular query for method get all. And then I have defined one more query for selection. Select star from user where UID and user IDs. This we call it as named parameters, right? And we have a method load all by user IDs, and we give array of user IDs. This user ID array will be passed for this particular named parameter, and in this at runtime, right? This will be converted into a SQL query where select star from user where UID in within bracket this IDs. Typically, we see query, right? Use select star from user where user ID within bracket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you see a user within this items, it will be retrieving all users. So that kind of thing. This named parameter also there with room. And one more thing, you can, this is again load named parameter itself. You can pass different n number of parameters, and they will be taken in order. So here we have two named parameters. Select star from user where first name like colon first and last name like colon last. That means this method, whatever is following this annotation, should have two parameters naming. You can namingly first and last. So anyway, this naming should be there. Otherwise, you can also give numbers. You can say 1 and 2. That takes your first in order. You have two parameters here, so that order will be given 1 and 2. And insert. So I'm inserting a user into a table, right? So I have insert annotation, insert all users, type of user. So this means this method has a list of users. This can be inserted. So overall, we create object of this particular DAO, and you can call these methods by passing relevant parameter that takes care of your CRUD operations in the table. Okay, now I have told there are different annotations, right? In JPA or Hibernate or any typical web development application development, see, you will have for mapping, you will have annotations for you will have annotations for ignoring some field. If you remember, we have a annotation called a transient in a typical JPA system. Now here differently we have @ignore. If you say there are fields, right? There are primary key annotation that says a value is a primary key, and okay, I will consider a scenario where you have a user. User is having ID and the first name and last name and address, and you have something called a complete name. Okay, complete name is anyway derived from first name and last name. You can retrieve them and process it and keep it in your application, but you don't have to store it, right? So what you can have here, you can have more value called complete name, where two things are combined, but you can have it with the ignore annotation. That means whenever you persist with DB, you delete it or read it or write it, this particular annotated field will be ignored. Better than this combined name, you think that okay, you have a user picture, profile picture. So anyway, you have other storages, right? You have your file storages, media storages. So those places are very optimal for storing names. your database is only for other structural data. What you can do, you can have a picture with your user, but you can ignore it to your room. Ignore notation will take care of it. And you can have probably what we can do, we can have of picture URL here in the so that URL will be of media location where this profile picture is stored. So that's it for ignoring. We have other fields probably if we room documentation, right? We will get into all those fields, and now we will come to a scenario where you don't have only one primary key. You have two different columns to bring the uniqueness in the data. So what you have is you have something called index annotation that has certain things like you can define how many items you want to combine for an indexing array, and whether you bring uniqueness to it, unique, true or false. Here is a small demonstration where I have user. This first name and last name should be unique, right, for any given user. So we can you can give a number of columns into it. You can even add address to it. A first name and last name address should be unique. Our phone number should be unique. So this annotation index will bring uniqueness to a entity by given column names and uniqueness true or false. And that's it. This again is about the DAO. DAO, as I told, right, this is for querying. You for inserting, deleting, querying, you can use DAO. For after that, okay, once your entity is ready and DAO is ready, you need to build a DB connectivity. So what you have in Room is you have a database builder which takes care of building DB connectivity for your application. Where in database builder you need to give your application context and which class which is defined for your database. In previous slide, we have defined the app database for your DB class, and database name. What exactly literal name for that particular database? Here, for example, you name your database as user database, user DB. That particular name should be given here, and then your build function will take care of your DB connectivity building. And then you have your entity ready, and then DAO class ready, and your DB connectivity is ready. That's it. You are now ready to go retrieve your users by creating user DAO class. User DAO, DB user DAO, and users, list of users, user DAO, get all. So this get all will be giving you all available users in the form of list. If you want to delete one of the user, you can just go ahead and say, okay, user DAO dot delete of users of 0. So if there are a number of users, it deletes first user in the table. For inserting also, you have an entity, right? You create an object. You create an object called user, new user. You can tell them new user ID is this one, and the first name is this one, and second name is last name is this one, and say user DAO dot insert of that, you give that object, so it inserts. Actually, I have cleared. And then probably we can use the times for any other discussions probably. So now, right? Oh, hello.
Yes, sir. Participants, if you have any queries, you can ask now.
Okay, now, okay, interestingly, when people are thinking about queries, I open up and show my
Sir,
IDA
sir,
where, yeah,
Sir Ramesh, sir, actually, is there any PPT that you can share in WhatsApp, sir, for this SQLite, if possible?
yeah, I've shared. Actually, this my slides are very minimal. Sorry for that. The
No
reason is
issue,
right
no issue. You can take
here.
your time, sir, no problem.
Yeah, yeah.
It is not
I will
urgent,
share.
sir.
See,
You can share it at your
yes,
feasible
yes,
time, sir, no issue.
yes. Yeah, I will do it. So actually, I will take you to the application. I have given an application, created application which loads the images from your external device, and then I have given an option to delete it. Okay, so this already anyway we have talked about it. So this is the app. So I have one activity and model and image definition. I have a KT file. So main activity. So this is my main activity, and any activity to display images, right? You need to have adapters. It can be any adapter. Now I have used a gallery adapter. A gallery adapter the- mm, is an adapter used for displaying images. You have list adapter or so many adapters in Android. So for gallery, I use the gallery adapter. Anyway, we are displaying images, and then I bind content view. In my resources, right, I have a layout file where I have defined my layout. Active main activity layout is there, that is being bind here, and I have added a gallery adapter. And I have added manager for my view, and my view model for all images. I have given an observer, and then have defined an action for deletion. So for deletion, I have defined the permission prompt for the deletion. So this is how things can be done. And I'm showing the images in gallery grid view. This is my activity, and the show images will have view model load images. View model is defined here in this Kotlin class. So here, when we say load images, content result observer setup I have told you already, and then this model is having certain methods defined. One is load images by querying media API. We query lot of images and loading, and for deletion I have given it. So I have given two different type of deletion. One is delete directly, or whatever is not being deleted can be kept in a pending state. Actually, it can be deleted by using a background service. that option. So I have also built this APK. I have I probably share it to people. You can just have a look at it. Can I share an APK in this call?
Sir, I think you have a network issue. And we will share all these contents with you, the participants.
Okay. Okay, that's it from my side. So actually, I will share one more. So these are all the references I have taken. This is also added in the PPT. So for that page, we have a whole developer and which is good enough. And actually, I have referred a Git repository where you have each and every heap related to your storage options. You have a given. I'll share that URL. Anyway, it is there in the PPT. I will probably just open it and show you like what and all is there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable knowledge, sir. We are honored by your presence. Thank you.
Thank you.
And participants, we will have our next meet at 2 p.m.
Madam, next section at what time, ma'am?
It's at 2 p.m., sir. At 2 p.m.
Okay.